remind me if you'll be so kind. Staring out into space, asking God to hear my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host of the show, Lori LeBay, and my mom had dementia for 30 years, so believe me, I get it. For those of you that are new to our show, everyone's voice is welcome. Alzheimer Speaks was built on the base of raising everyone's voice and connecting them to services, products, and tools and stories of everyday life of living with dementia. So again, welcome to the show. I do want to give a shout out because I'm so excited. I've been working with a group in Minnesota here, and we have finally made live our dementia-friendly airport. It's our dementia-friendly airports working group, and we just launched a new survey called Traveling with Dementia Airport Story Survey. And you can find that if you go to alzheimerspeaks.com. There's a big icon. Just click on that, and you'll get more information about that survey. The survey will be open until September 15th, and we would love people with dementia and their travel companions to participate in that. It's the U of M is helping us here, and it's really going to be one of the first gathering of data when it comes to travel. So again, would love you to participate in that. I also want to give a shout out to Stall Catchers, which is a game that we can all play, and when we play the game, we're actually helping analyze data. Also, shout out to Alzheimer's Disease International. They have a live survey right now, and they want to know, what do you think about dementia? They put together every fall a brilliant document with great data, and so if you can participate in that, that would be fantastic as well. And then I would be amiss if I didn't mention the Memory Cafe directory. If you are looking for that social support group for people with dementia and their care partners, check them out at the memorycafedirectory.com. And maybe you have a Memory Cafe, but you're not in the directory. Again, give a shout out to them because they'll get you in there. Dave has been very gracious about doing that. And so our U.S. directory is quite large at this point. But again, we still know we need more Memory Cafes in there. Last, before I introduce our guest today, I just want to thank all of our listeners. Your likes, your clicks, and your shares have just helped us so much in terms of spreading the word of products, services, and tools that people can tap into. And hearing other people's stories is just so vitally important, I think, to all of us. And so, again, I thank everybody deeply for your support. Today, we're going to have a discussion of basically dementia care within both community settings and families. And we are lucky to have Jean Smiley with us. In 1997, Jean changed careers and became a certified nurse's aide, and she worked in the field on and off throughout the years since. But in 2010, her mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and her husband started showing signs of dementia as well. Since 2012, Jean has set out to make a difference in terms of helping others understand the disease and what they might be facing along the lines. And she really is passionate about shining a light on awareness and giving hope and tips. So welcome, Jean. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Lori. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, excited to have you on. If you, I always ask people, and I mentioned this kind of in your intro,
Okay.
You know that your mom had dementia, your husband was showing signs. Can you give people a little bit more history about that, and we'll kind of carry on from there then.
Yeah, and it was my mom's husband. I don't want to kind of yeah,
Oh,
it's actually her husband, but that's okay. I mean,
yep,
um
I stated that wrong. I have it right in front of me that it was her husband
yeah,
and not you.
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And so so you want me to begin with
Just a little history in terms,
from
and maybe in terms of what type of signs were you seeing with each of them, because I think that helps our audience understand. Because some people might be in that place where they're wondering, is this a problem or not?
okay, yeah. So it was, I'd say, maybe 2008, 2009, that, things kind of started to change for both of them. Um, my mother wasn't driving. Her husband did the driving. He was starting to have, some issues with that. Um, and that was based on what she had told me, what my mother had told me. But if, for instance, there was a time where they went to the mall, and it was the middle of winter time, and so there was an issue with the car, and they kind of didn't they got lost as far as trying to figure out what to do and how to get home. So within probably the last year before the diagnosis is when things like that started to go on. Um, let's see, I kind of um, noticed that when I would go visit her, instead of her, remembering anything, she was starting to put um, everything that she needed to do, like she was reminding herself, she was putting it on little Post-it notes. So there were many times where I would go there and I would see like 10 of them up there on the refrigerator of different things that she needed to do, or up on the cabinet. Um, there's just you when you see them and you visit, you know, even when you're just going out for lunch or something like that, there are things that you notice in the conversations that you're having together as well. They don't seem to be on track like they should be. Um, and so, the subjects change too often. Um, so, depending on, now I was very close to my mother when I started having children. We spent a lot of time together, mostly with the kids. And so, it just, depending on how much time you spend together, I think you're going to notice that something's different more than you would if you visited them, if you've seen your parent, your mother, your father, your grandparents. If you've seen them once a year, you may not notice. But if you're with them all the time, or if you talk to them on the phone all the time, and there were many times where my mother and we talked on the phone every day, at least once a day. So I mean, you're gonna know. There's just something's gonna tell you. Yeah. And then, especially when you visit, you're gonna see things like my mother was always. Um, she was always very clean, always very clean. I mean, you didn't even see if there was a dirty cup. I mean, somebody put a cup in the sink, 2 minutes later she's washing it and putting it away. I mean, there was never, everything was always neat and clean. So if you had a parent like that, and then all of a sudden you notice that the garbage is not getting thrown, or, dishes are piling up in the sink. I mean, there's things that you just notice. And they may start getting more tired, and they may start wanting to, nap too much in the middle of the day, falling asleep too much, when they normally would be out all day, shopping, walking, doing things. But you can't assume right off the bat that it's any kind of a major issue, like any dementia type or anything like that. You always have to find out, are they drinking enough water? Are they getting enough exercise? Are they eating right? I mean, there's other factors that could come into play, but it's repeated behaviors and patterns that you start to see when you know that, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I agree. I saw kind of the same thing with my mom. She kind of pulled back socially, which she was always very social. And I think she was afraid of making a mistake. She stopped driving at night, which can be real common as people age, though, too. But and then she ended up giving up her license very easily because she just wasn't comfortable behind the wheel. She started acting different in public scenarios, and we didn't realize it was because of overstimulation and kind of confusion. Couldn't order off the menu like she used to, or would forget it if she was in a buffet line. If she had one plate, she'd put it down and see something else, and she'd go over to that. It was a lot of little things. Or with mine, she was really hell bent on having to watch Channel 4. She did not want the TV turned at all, and we finally figured out it was because she couldn't tell time anymore. But she could tell the time by the newscasts, and she knew these news anchors were afternoon or evening or morning, and that's kind of how she told her day. And she didn't know how to use the clicker. She stopped, being able to use the phone or other, vacuum cleaners, microwaves, washers and dryers, and just kind of pulled back, and things became apparent. But they built up over time because they were all subtle little things that weren't major, and then all of a sudden it hits a point where something's just not right.
That is exactly true. Exactly true.
Yeah, and I think as family, we want to be in denial that there could be something wrong too.
Oh God, of course we do. Oh, of course.
So, well, let's thank you kind of for that setup. I want to talk a little bit about your experience as a certified nurse's aide, because I'm sure you saw and dealt with a lot of things and interacted, with those with dementia and their families during that period. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, your experience there, and the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever would be interesting for us to know as well.
Okay, all right. So when you work as a nurse's aide, when you're in that industry, it is very, it's very emotional, and it's not easy. But okay, this is your job. So there's a big difference between, your job, and then when it becomes personal. Okay, which you don't expect. I never expected this at all. But I just, in 97, I decided that I wanted to do something that was different than what I had been doing previously. Before I was working in accounting. I was an account manager. I was working in sales. So I did a complete turnaround, with careers, because I just wanted something, more spiritual for me. And I just happened to come across, I remember it perfectly. I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I was reading the newspaper, as we all used to do back in the day, and I seen an ad in there for nursing assistants, and I thought, well, I could give it a try, and maybe it would be a stepping stone to something else, maybe, becoming an RN later on, or you don't, or something else, but that's what it would be. And so it was different because I never did work. I had never, in anything associated with healthcare before that. And as a matter of fact, I never even had to step into a nursing home, a long-term care for any reason. So I never even saw one. I never even went in. And so my first job, I finished the course. The course was like 6 weeks long. And I remember the instructor we had, she made it a point to make sure that she told everybody, always have good posture. Always, it's going to affect your back later if you don't stand properly, if you don't bend properly, if you don't, lift properly. Always bending your knees and standing in a certain position. So, along with the other things that we learned about taking care of somebody who is elderly, or any age basically in the hospital, that was pointed out a lot. So, but the things you learn are stuff like taking vital signs and trying to be on the lookout for skin changes. Pressure ulcers are a big problem in skilled nursing today. So we also learned, how to properly feed somebody, how to properly change them, how to, take them to the bathroom, things like that, grooming, ambulating. So, but I got to tell you, okay, during the whole course of the training, there is a book, and it goes by chapters. You go according to book. There's one chapter on understanding dementia. One chapter out of maybe 34. And that needs to change. That really needs to change. I mean, everything that's being taught in the course is important. Of course it's important. But there also needs to be additional training, maybe, like 2 weeks or something after you've started your first job, maybe while you're taking the course, maybe 3 months down the road. There always needs to be additional dementia training, because there are a lot of people that go through this course and they're thinking the same way that I did. I'm gonna, I want to work in healthcare. I want to be a nurse. I want to take care of people, and they last. They go to their first job and they last, 2 weeks, a month, and they can't give it a chance because they can't, because it's very hard. You have to be able to, understand how people are feeling. You have to be able to understand the whole system. And now, and when in '97, okay, yes, there was dementia, of different types. There was, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease, but it's not like it is. It wasn't like it is today. It's much different. So you might have had an elderly person who was in long-term care because they couldn't walk anymore or use their gait, but they didn't have any issues with dementia. They just were safer, being in long-term care than they were being at home by themselves in their own apartment. So there are more cases today of people with these additional dementia types. And so we need good people that they want to do this. They have the heart for it. They have the soul for it. This is what they want to do. But they're having a hard time. Like I said, they don't, and it's not easy too, because you don't have the kind of time. I've worked in assisted living. When I did this, I worked in long-term care. I worked in a hospital setting for a little while, and I also worked in home health. So I've been in different phases. Now, in '97, there wasn't really anything called memory care. If you needed to be if you had like any dementia type, you would go from assisted living straight to skilled nursing. So the memory care unit is like an in-between a spot, so that a person is not going straight to, long-term care. They may not be ready for that yet, but they can't live in assisted living anymore because that's their safety issues now. So now, yeah, I've worked in, all different settings. So, but it's different today than it was then. But like I said, we need to keep good people in this setting that want to work. And so, but the patient ratio per aide or tech, it needs to be reasonable too.
Yeah, one of the things, you were mentioning is the change. And I think one of the biggest changes is, people had dementia all along, but they weren't necessarily diagnosed with it back in the day. I mean, for not that long ago, we still called people senile, and they had different labels. And there was a belief that nothing could be done. And so they were just kind of drugged, or they were left in their wheelchairs. The care levels and the expectation of the care levels have changed dramatically. And I think the expectation of care for people with dementia, to provide them with dignity and purpose, and, adult activities and all of that has changed dramatically. And with that has to come enough training to allow staff to be able to be knowledgeable enough to work within. And then you also get into, like you said, the staffing ratios as well, with that. So thank you kind of for sharing a little bit with us on that. I remember, my great aunt, this was before my mom, and my mom's been gone 5 years, lived with it 30 years. So my great aunt was in a nursing home, and they just called her senile. And that was when I was 13. So that was 47 years ago. And I mean, there was, nursing homes were dark, dingy, smelled the urine. People were kind of left on their own. I remember wheelchairs rolling into one another, or people even being faced up against a wall and drooling. And it was such a sad state. And I walk into a nursing home nowadays, and it's nothing like that. But again, I think our expectations have changed, and I think they'll continue to change and hopefully improve. But with that comes the educational piece, which is so significant in terms of how do we help both family and professional staff not get burnt out. How do we get them to thrive in those roles? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, actually, well, I mean, like I said before, I think there does need to be, a lot more training for dementia care. And I think that if there was, then people will understand. I mean, you're talking about somebody that's maybe 20 years old, and they're walking into, an environment like this, and they're thinking they don't really know, and they're thinking that they're going to be taking care of, somebody's grandmother or grandfather, and they're going to basically, maybe help them go to the bathroom and feed them, and they're going to be able to do it, in a way where they can spend time and do that, and they'll be able to read them a book or something, and everything's going to be just sweet. And that's not exactly how it's going to go. So I think people need to know, and be trained for it.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of hard to, I mean, unless you're actually going through the steps with people, each one of them, it takes time to explain, what I'm saying? Like, okay, bath time, for instance. And this is important too, because if you have no choice and you cannot keep, if your parents or grandparents are diagnosed with a dementia type or Alzheimer's, and you have, I mean, I think that somebody being at home for as long as possible is the best. But if you have no choice, like I did, to start off with assisted living or go to memory care or whatever, there's you need to, when you're looking for a place, okay, you need to make, I think, at least 3 visits to that place, just to be sure that this is the place where you want them to go. Now, one of those visits, you might walk in and you're walking down the hall because you're checking things out. You want it to be perfect for your loved one, and then all of a sudden you might hear screaming. Okay, so you can't be alarmed by that right off the bat, because it was bathing, for instance. There might be somebody who, as soon as the water touches their skin, they don't like it. They don't like it, and they scream. And so, as far as and I'm trying not to go off track, but as far as the dementia training goes, you're going to have with proper training, you're going to have a better understanding as to why, somebody screams as soon as they feel a little bit of water on their skin. And maybe it's just at first, and they just have to get used to it. Takes them a few minutes. I've had patients like that, but they may scream, and so you always have to, when you're looking for a place, you always don't assume, never assume anything. You have to ask questions and you're walking down the hall, you hear somebody screaming, ask somebody what happened and why before you think that maybe that's not a good place.
Yeah. Well, I know my mom used to love the water, and then she had problems with the shower or bath. With bath, she couldn't really get in and out of because her knees were bad, and even the walk-in tubs weren't, she still had to step up the way the one was situated where she was at. And then the showers, she would just fight them, which was just so uncharacteristic because she always liked to be well groomed and stuff. And then I found out later that, as we age, we lose our fat pads, and the water pressure actually hurt her. And then that made a lot of sense. So some of the things that we did, and she was in a nursing home, was they changed to a handheld rain shower head. And they could start at her feet and get her used to it, and then work their way up the body. And they could, dial the pressure too. But the rain shower heads are much softer and not as scary versus you're standing there and you're cold and kind of uncomfortable and you're naked in front of a stranger, and then all of a sudden, poof, something hard hits you. And when you've got dementia, you might not recognize that you're in a shower and that that's water. All of a sudden something's just hitting your body hard and stuff. So we have to look at things in a different frame of mind in terms of what's happening. And I think one of the things that I still don't think most places do well is to educate family on these issues that they've been trained to take care of.
Right, absolutely.
Because I think that could help families be able to keep somebody home maybe a little bit longer if they know those things while they're looking. Or, if they do decide to move them, they're going to understand and they'll be able to support what is happening and do some reassurance and maybe give some other tips out for the shower, like with people are starting to use aromatherapy. They're starting to pump music into the rooms. They're starting to have heated floors and heated towel bars, so that they stay warmer, using different colors, all kinds of stuff. They're really, looking at aging gracefully and comfortably in a whole different light. And they're starting to realize the impact of the verbal and nonverbal as well as the physical essence of the environment that you're in and the impact that it has on people, which is absolutely, critical with that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that is absolutely the truth. And we're of course we want a cure. Okay, nobody wants to even have to think about, will I end up with Alzheimer's? Will I end up with any type dementia? But I think, in the meantime, because that cure could be far off. That's what we want. That's what we hope for. But in the meantime, just like you said, the way people are being cared for, it's getting better, but it still needs a lot of improvement. Though there's things like you said that are, that have changed as opposed to the way that they used to be. But we still have a long way to go with that. We really do. And it's the little things. It's the little things that people are not thinking about, like with the shower, there's so much more understanding that needs to be done. There's so much more training that needs to be done. And, that's just it's all about the care.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, too, when it comes to training that, and I hear this a lot as I travel the country speaking and training, people want the training that's going to be the end all be all. It's going to fix everything, and there isn't a training out there, and there never will be, because every single person is an individual. Every family dynamic is different. Every community is different. Every environment is different, and so we have to keep that in mind. So I would really like to see more communities doing more diverse training versus just staying on one track, because I think everybody learns differently too, and they take things in a different mode. And there's so much to this disease, and I sometimes I think people get really closed mind and go, well, this is how we do it here, and or this is the way we've always done it, and those are two statements that just make me cringe. No matter what, no matter.
Oh, I know. That's,
no matter
you're right.
what the situation is, and so I think we have to help people get creative and not be so fearful of trying different things. And, if it doesn't work, that's fine. Share it with staff, share it with family, so everybody knows at that time we did try this, and you might try it again, and it might work, But, we shouldn't be embarrassed or afraid to try to help somebody be more comfortable. But, when it doesn't work and the way that we think, then we need to openly share that too. And know that our intent is always to improve, but you can't improve if you're not analyzing and taking in the data of what's not working. To me, you're never going to be effective if you don't look at both sides of that. And so what I see sometimes when I go around to communities is that they're not allowed to try. They're not given the authority to do anything different. This is the way we do it here, or I've even heard people say, well, that's not your job. Well, why would you ever not listen to an idea?
Exactly.
Because somebody from the outside, and it might be housekeeping or maintenance or a secretary that is seeing things repeated over and over, and maybe the person working with them doesn't see, that repetitiveness, but they're picking up on something else and has an idea. But when we destroy that team effort, and that people feeling that they're valued, then they're not going to share, even if they know there might be better ways to handle something. If they're not being listened to, if they're feeling like they're not being respected and heard. So I think we have to be really careful, and that can happen in a community, and it can easily happen in a family as well, where we dismiss somebody. They've always been the black sheep or the troublemaker, and we're not going to let them out of that role. And maybe they've grown up, maybe they have some true insights or some expertise, but we're devaluing them because this is who we've always seen them as. And that can be a dangerous step for families sometimes. And sometimes that line has to be there to protect the loved one, but there's a big difference between protecting somebody and devaluing somebody because of their history, and not really looking at who they are today in that moment. And I think we all want to. Go ahead.
That's the truth.
Yeah, I think we all want to be valued for who we are today, and hopefully be forgiven for the screw ups we made in the past, because we've all screwed up, and different levels maybe within the family structure. But I know in my own family, I was kind of it. My brothers allowed me to be that person, that kind of lead horse and stuff, but there were things I wish they would have said to me, because maybe they would have been more involved, because they saw things in my behavior I didn't see, or I saw differently. Like they saw a control freak and I saw an organized person, and there's a big difference between those two. And some of that can be excuses not to come around, but some of it can be talked through and changed. too, so that everybody can be involved if they truly want to be involved. And so,
Well,
again,
that's the thing too. If they truly want to be, so.
hmm yeah, because sometimes it's hard. It's hard conversations that we have to have that move the needle forward. Do you have tips for people who maybe are going through some struggles, or I'm sure you went through some personal struggles caring for your mom and her husband as well.
Oh, I went through an abundant amount of struggles. But I do what I'd like. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. Well, I mean, when you first hear, okay, however you find out, whether you're with your parent or your grandparent or whoever it is that they are diagnosed with us, okay, this is something that, as soon as you hear it, it doesn't leave you, okay? It's you carry it, and I describe it like putting a backpack on, okay? So, and then so you've got that in the back of your mind, and then you realize that it's not going away, that there's no cure. So then you have that to contend with. And so you have those emotions with you, and then you're the one that is taking care or helping them with care. So they may not completely understand what they were just told or what's going on. It all depends on how far along, what stage they're in or how far along this is by the time they know. But then you're the one that's, spending time with them, knowing how how this is all going to end. And so you can't carry that with you consistently and not expect something to let's see, how do I put it? You can't expect it to not manifest somehow, for you. So I immediately, right as soon as you find out that there's a diagnosis, I believe that you should start grief counseling immediately, because you're going to be going through different stages with your loved ones, and it's going to be like you are grieving already, not the kind of grief that you have after somebody has passed away. Your grieving process begins when they get their diagnosis. So I highly recommend any kind of group resources or grief counseling in that way. I think that you have to, if you're the main person that is looking after people, I think that you need to take breaks from that, if at all possible, when you can, because you just can't be in that kind of situation consistently. It's just going to affect you, and so you need to make time for yourself. You really do. You have to find a way to do that. I mean, if you're worried about them, being, I refer to them because I had two people together who were going through all this, So, but if it's your mom or your dad, or, if you feel like you need to be away from the situation for like a week, for like a day or two, I mean, there are ways to find relief, and you can hire, a caregiver to come and sit with your mom or dad or loved one all day long, and then you could just go somewhere just for the day.
Did you
And do
tap into
something
that
that
for yourself?
makes you happy.
Hmm. Did you
Oh,
tap into
I
that
had
for
to.
yourself?
I had to at times. It was just too overwhelming. Um, I mean, and also during the time that they were sick in 2011, my youngest sister passed away too. So
Oh wow.
you know, yeah. So I mean, I was grieving that on top of grieving, their diagnosis and all that. So it just seems like, and
Oh, can you
on Facebook.
can you repeat that? It cut out for whatever reason. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have an awareness page that I started 7.5 years ago on Facebook, and based on you know people's messages to me and comments, that it seems like for whatever reason that when you have somebody that is diagnosed and you get that, you know you find all that out, it's like there's so many other things that follow, that happen afterwards. It seems like before, your life might have been a little bit more quiet, and then you go through this period where there's like 10 different life changes that go on, and then all of a sudden it stops. All of a sudden it stops. And so I think that you need to be prepared for anything. And that's why I say start with the grief counseling right away. Again, and make time for yourself. Always make time for yourself.
So you're talking
Um,
really about ambiguous grief when they're still alive. So once they get diagnosed, is that what you're referring to?
yes, yes. And you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself too. You have to make sure that you're exercising too, that you're eating right, so that you can have the strength and the energy. Um, that's really important. It's also important too not to involve yourself in other things that are going on with other people, their problems. Um, I mean, unless it's something that is urgent that you need to take care of. But when you're in the midst of helping, a loved one, and you're the caregiver, you're the person that's helping with care, you can't have other things, other situations. Um,
Yeah,
going
dementia does really help you evaluate and cut out some of the other drama in your life, and I think that that's really important.
exactly.
I don't think drama is really good for any of us. Period. And in the fast-paced world that we're living in, it seems like it's spitting out at even a higher result than it has in the past. And but you have to protect yourself and your loved ones from that drama because they're not going to react well to drama. And if you pretend like you're handling it, they're going to see that you're not because the person with dementia will still read all of your nonverbals. And, you can walk in, like I say, with your Stepford wife smile on, like everything is fine. But they're going to notice that you're twitching or that your eyes look dark or maybe you've been crying or your, your hands are in a fist or you're kind of clicking your jaw, whatever it might be, how you show your frustration or anger or antsiness, they're going to pick up on all that stuff, and chances are they're going to mirror it back to you, and then you're going to blame them when they were fine
well,
before.
oh yeah, absolutely. You'd be surprised what it is that they see. I mean, there were a couple of times where I just when I thought, when my mother, for instance, wasn't, very lucid that day, just when I thought, she would just out of the blue ask me, "Is everything okay?
Mhm.
Are you okay?" It would just come out of
Yep.
the blue. But it would just be so happen, when she would ask me that, I had something happen that day.
Mhm.
It's as if she knew. It was the strangest thing.
Yep. Yep. They're still very good at reading us, and they want us to be comfortable, and most with dementia don't want to be a burden, and they say that, and they're worried about their care partners and things. So I think having those honest conversations, keeping your circle of friends or your hobbies, whatever kind of fills you, you need to do. And it's hard. I know for a long time I pushed it away. I thought I don't have time, and that's a luxury in my life. And it's not a luxury. It's an asset you can't let go of. You really need that to preserve yourself so that you can better care for them. Because if you're empty, there's a lot of things you're not even going to notice how you're reacting because
Yeah.
you're tired, you're exhausted. What have you found life to be like after your caregiving journey?
Well, it just, I mean, when they both passed away, they passed away 5 days apart.
Oh wow.
Um, so yeah, everything just suddenly stopped, and you know, it really. I mean, you adjust your whole. You end up adjusting your whole life, to their needs during this time. There I go again. I say there, but I mean, for most people, it's just one individual. Maybe mom or dad, or one grandparent that they're. But for me, it was two. So, but you're so used to doing everything with them. I mean, I just like even like for Mother's Day, for instance, my sons would be like, "Well, what are we doing?" And I'd be like, "Well, I'm going to be with Grandma today." So if we're
Mhm.
going to spend Mother's Day together, then you guys need to come to the memory care because that's where I'll be. Just come there, we'll sit, we'll play games, whatever we need to do. um, all of our lives changed. It was
Mhm.
different, and then when it was over, it's like you it's like, what do I do now? You keep
Yeah.
checking your phone because you know what I mean. There's going to be a call. One is sick. You know what I mean? You gotta.
Yeah.
It's a good thing too that I found a place that was close to where I live. So I was able to be there if I needed to be there, like, within minutes.
Mhm.
Um, Somebody needs to go to the hospital. They've got the flu. I mean, and so they would take my mother in the ambulance over to the hospital because she was throwing up. There was for 4 years straight. That's what life was like for me. And plus, with my
Mhm.
three kids, I mean, there's always something going on with them. It just never seemed to end. And then all of a sudden, it stops. And you're like, oh, wow. And that affects you too, because then you're grieving a whole new issue that they're gone. You don't even have them to
Yeah.
visit anymore, no matter how much went on in those 4 years, you know, between all of you, and it was tough. But they're gone. So
Yeah.
that's why I say, because at least if you start the grief counseling while you're, in the beginning of it, or while you're in the midst of it, then you can continue that on afterwards. And you have to learn all over again, like how to adjust to life.
Yeah.
And just simply go back to, or maybe you don't. I didn't go back to the old life I had. I moved forward and I started having a new life for myself. My kids got older. It was very strange, and then grandchildren started coming. So it was, but you learn a lot about yourself, Lori.
Yeah, I know when my folks passed, it was I didn't know who I was because I didn't hold on to my hobbies, and I didn't hold on to kind of feeling myself. I pulled out from a lot of circles of my friends, and so I was really lost. I was really lost for about a year, and I had to figure out who I was going to be in this next role. And it was a very interesting process, but I think it's a very common one too. And so be nice to yourself if you're feeling exhausted, or if you're feeling confused or withdrawn. You got to regroup again. And it's the circle of life. I wanted to give you an opportunity. We've only got about 3 minutes left here, Jean.
Oh boy.
For people in terms of getting a hold of you, and you said they can reach you by email. Is that correct?
Okay, so yeah, people can reach me by email. I also do have my Facebook page, my Alzheimer's disease.
Can you say that
Alzheimer's.
Again?
Yeah, I have my Facebook page. It's Alzheimer's disease and dementias, and I call it Public Enemy Number One. And there's a story behind calling that the awareness page. But anyway, it got attention, and that was the whole point, right? So that's what we need. We need more awareness. We need good caregiving. We need to take care of our caregivers. If you know somebody who's a caregiver, please offer to sit with their loved one for them. Make them dinner. Oh my God, I ate out all the time. I did, I would have loved to have somebody make me dinner. It would have been nice. Do that for them. Yeah. Take them shopping, anything. Take care of them. It's really important. So people can reach me through any of those means if they have questions. There's always so many questions. So I just, I'm praying for everybody because, there's a lot to learn. There's still a lot to learn. And social media was as far as I'm concerned, it was a godsend, because all you have to do is go on there, wherever you go, Twitter or Facebook or whatever, type in the word dementia, type in the word Alzheimer's, and there you go. There's pages, there's groups, there's different resources for people. Any question that you have, any kind of question that you have, it's all over the board. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and you can connect with a lot of different groups and see what feels best for you and choose. So again, Jean, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story. Again, you can reach Jean by her email, which is noted for you, or you can go to her Facebook page as well. Thank you so much, and I'll talk soon. Bye now.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay,
And I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.